Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in the middle of nowhere in a tiny little place surrounded by forest. It was not just a forest, it was a Russian forest. 1,000 kilometers to the right, 1,000 kilometers to the left, only trees. This little girl knew everything about mushrooms, berries, and flowers. But it was also not just a place. It was a totally isolated place with its own iron curtain, a place not to be found on any map. It was a restricted area. Nobody would come in and not simple to go out. Why did she live then there? She was a daughter of a military officer. Anyway, it was the most unlikely place to fall in love with culture. There was no culture. It was a forest. There were no museums, no theaters, no concert halls, no music schools, no orchestra, not even musicians. But still, there was music. Birds were singing, and soldiers each morning marching and singing. Enough inspiration. This little girl started to sing along. And she loved it, because in her imagination, she could fly anywhere she wanted outside of this iron curtain. Here, there were no borders, no gates. She was free as a bird. Only this poor girl, she didn't realize that actually she could not fly anywhere, not like those birds. Her parents noticed her unbelievable desire for music and decided to give her an instrument, a grand piano. When she was 3, there it was, her grand piano. Proudly, she placed it under the table. A toy grand piano can be very handy. And she performed there all the time in her private concert hall. When she was 7, she received a real piano. And from that moment, she knew already that she will stay with music till the rest of her life. Music became her very best friend. And she could entrust to music everything. Fortunately, there was somebody in that forest who knew something about music and could teach her how to play piano. It was the wife of another military officer. When she was 9, her parents divorced. Father left the family and the forest. They never saw him again. The family had to stay behind because they could not simply leave. This little girl could cry out all her pain through music and find consolation for her mother and little sister. Music was healing. She started to dream about the big world because there she could follow a professional music education. In communistic Russia, education was for free, but only the best ones, the most talented, could be accepted at music college. So she knew she had to become really, really very good. When she was 15, it was a time to try, to run, to fly, to break through these gates for music, for her dream. Her mother took her outside of her home forest, and like this, she could see for the first time a real city. And she was scared, because before this, she never heard anybody play live classical music. It was only through this little radio in the kitchen. So, would be she good enough to be accepted? Yes. To her surprise, she turned out to be one of the best students. And everybody spoke about the forest girl. Did you hear this forest girl playing? Did you hear this forest girl playing? Do you like this fairy tale about this forest girl? I'm sure you, of course, all guessed already that actually it's all true. And this little forest girl was me. So what happened after in my life? I started my study in music college, but for this I had to leave behind my forest, my mother, my sister, and my beloved piano. When you think about music college, you probably think about Steinways, Bechsteins, nice, good conditions. But in music college where I studied, we had only 8 pianos of unknown brand. And I remember only one was really playable. But there were a lot of students, and we all were fighting to be able to play on one of those pianos. We were allowed to practice in our music college from 6 till 9 o'clock in the morning, and from 9 till 12 o'clock in the evening. And in between, there were piano lessons, or lessons. But since there were more students, obviously, than pianos, we already were waiting in the night, in line, outside of music college, in open air, till 6 o'clock in the morning, to be able to play. Once I came at 3 o'clock in the morning, there were already 8 students waiting. Crying, I went back home because I knew tomorrow I will not be able to practice. Okay, next day, just the whole night staying there. And I remember a lot of nights like this, when we were staying and waiting for our turn to play. Imagine Russian winter with minus 30 degrees. We were staying and waiting the whole night outside in open air. And we were not complaining, not at all. Just to stay warm, we had to dance and to sing together the whole night, not to be frozen. We just wanted to play and to be good. The biggest and the most important present from that time, I remember a teacher. A great teacher who I met there in my music college. She knew the secret of how to make a piano sing. She was the one to recognize my unbelievable hunger for culture. She took me under her wing, and she brought me 1,000 kilometers away to Moscow to introduce me to big culture. Thanks to her, I've seen for the first time in my life museums, theaters, opera, ballet, orchestra, the Bolshoi theater. Thanks to my teacher. I finished my music college with distinction. I was accepted at the conservatory, where the history repeated itself, and again, I finished it with distinction. And I was so proud. I almost could not believe that I did it. I braked through the gates all this long way from my forest till now. I did it. Now I can start to give concerts because I am the pianist. But exactly at this moment, Russia was collapsing. It was 1993. It was time to survive. And at the age of 24, I had to take care of my whole family, my mother, who was thrown out from her job, my younger sister, who had to study, and education was not anymore for free. And I had 3-year-old daughter, no husband. He left me when my daughter was just born. So, instead of giving concerts, I started to sell a luxury women's underwear. Since there was nothing to eat for anybody,
professors, teachers, doctors, scientists, many of them went to sell things on the streets. And like this, I was again on trip together with my teacher, with my beloved piano teacher. But this time it had nothing to do with culture. With heavy bags full of underwear, we went from city to city, learning how to sell and how to survive. And remember, it was Russia. To sell things from door to door, it meant 1,000 kilometers to the right and 1,000 kilometers to the left. And all this time, I was without my child, because it was just too dangerous. I don't know how I would be able to survive this hard and unexpected time in my life if I would not carry music here with me in my heart. It was the only safe thing I could take with me anywhere I went to. To make this long story short, love brought me to Holland, where I live now for 13 years. Unfortunately, my beloved piano teacher was not able to continue in those difficult circumstances in music. This great talent, my big inspiration and my big example as a teacher, she had to give up her professional career because she could not make a living as a musician. Before I left for Holland, I promised to her that everything what she gave to me, her professional knowledge, her inspiration and her passion, I will bring with me to this country and I will give it to my pupils. Music always helped me in Russia when I had to cry or to laugh, to dream in love, to survive, and music made me strong. There in my forest, I learned two very important lessons. Music doesn't have any borders. You can be free and honest with music. And music can make your soul so rich. They can put a wall around you, but they cannot put a wall around your heart. And about this, I wanted to shout from the rooftops, to say to everybody about this power of music. In spite of difficult times in Russia, I'm thankful to my motherland for all life lessons I received there and for my professional education. But now I'm here in Holland. And I'm extremely happy that here in this country, I was able to fulfill my dreams from my forest. I was able to build up my own piano school where I teach now about 70 pupils. My goal is not to make all of them pianists, although I know some of them will. What I want is to bring these children to their future with an open heart for beauty, for culture, for classical music. And since they're children, I organize concerts like fairy tales, with wigs and baroque dresses, with carriages and horses and kings and queens, because this is a language they understand. And like this, not only my pupils go into the time machine, but the whole audience join us to travel back through the time. And like this, we go to visit Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. It helps us to understand why actually music was changing with the time. How did they live, our beloved composers? And it helps us better to understand their music language. In Russia, only the most talented children were able to learn to play and to perform. In my school, I don't make any selection. I want to give this opportunity to all children who love music and want to experience how does it feel to share your emotions with the public. Because I'm convinced that sharing of emotions makes not only your soul richer, but also those from the audience, from the listener. I always say to my pupils, music is not just about the right notes placed in the right timing. Music must speak, cry, sing, shout if it's necessary. Music must move. Don't panic if you will make a mistake. Nobody will remember a mistake. Try to avoid empty notes. Sing, play honestly from your heart. This people will feel, and this they will remember. And now remember back my piano teacher in Russia. Because of the circumstances there, she will never be able to give to other children what she gave to me. And it hurts me very much. We must make sure that people who are born with talent for arts and for beauty will be able to give it to us. If we will support culture, culture will support us. I learned this lesson very good in my life. I always remember one a famous quote from Winston Churchill. During the Second World War, one of his advisors came to him and told, let's cut on the funding for arts, and we can spend more money for the war effort. And Churchill replied, but then, what are we fighting for? Thank you very much.